was raised by a dad that told me never to ask for directions, so we did it the hard way. Today we're going to be diving into the world of small form factor and hopefully proving that it's easier than a lot of people think. It's within your reach these days, and the expense it's a little bit more, but not astronomically higher. And there's some unique capability here. So we're going to be focusing today on a new to me case. I'm trying out the Fractal Ridge, and spoiler alert, overall the quality on it, some of the ingenuity, the way they thought about making things easy to access, how to build in, I found it to be top notch. There was still some hiccups along the way, mostly because I just refused to read instructions, which in hindsight I realized they actually have a great manual to go with this case. I just charged blindly on ahead doing it on my own to try to accept the challenge. But overall, it was a huge success. I had a ton of fun building in it. I would highly, highly recommend the Fractal Ridge case. I thought it was just awesome. We'll go into looking at it a little bit more here in a minute. And then I just wanted to cover before we jump into what my goals were. So I really wanted to kind of make a console replacement. So you're never going to be able to build a computer as cheap as you can buy a console because it's supplemented by, their store that they have, online fees, all sorts of stuff that they have. So they can really supplement the hardware. But I wanted to have access for my whole Steam library. And I wanted it to be something that I could actually sit downstairs next to my TV. So that's kind of my goals, and so what I'm going to be judging this thing on when we get into it is, hey, can this thing do 60 frames per second at better than console type settings so that I can feel like I'm getting the PC experience, but it's going to fit in my living room and not look out of place. Or, if a stranger walked into my house, they wouldn't be like, oh, gross, there's this weird gaming PC in his living room. Like, no, this thing's going to fit right in. Probably nobody would even notice it. It's very subdued, very classical looking. It looks great. So those are the goals. That's kind of my initial thoughts on the Fractal Ridge. Big positive. And then let's jump right into looking at what we're building with and putting it together. Alright, today we're going to be doing a mini ITX build. I love making these small builds, and a lot of people are afraid to tackle these for a couple of reasons. A, maybe they're doing their first build and they're worried about just getting it together, and making it smaller seems to be harder. B, sometimes there's problems with component compatibility. You really got to make sure you're checking your clearances, making sure everything's going to work together, it's going to fit. And then C, just price. When you start going smaller, everything gets a little more expensive. So today we're going to be working in the Fractal Ridge, and I just opened this thing for the first time out of the box, and it does look nice. I will say it's a little larger than I initially expected, but if you look at this thing, it's got this nice mesh. It's like a cloth fabric front, some basic connectivity to USBs and USB-C. Looks like a little headphone jack, and then just some venting on both sides here. Looks like it's going to be pretty simple, and then you can see how the motherboard's going to be down below. The video card's going to be up on top. Let's go ahead and open this thing up. I haven't even opened it up yet, so I'll be curious to what it looks like on the inside. But yeah, the pricing, it is a little bit more expensive, but I think if you have the appropriate goals, there's some reasonable ways to get it done. So I'll kind of go over, my parts selected as we look at this build. But yeah, here we go. We open it up inside. It's got the two large fans up top that'll be good to cool down your video card, and then a little component here, or a little area for your ITX motherboard. That thing is going to be very small. And then where your power supply is going to mount over here. So overall, just initially looking at this looks like a very smart, compact design. I guess I don't really know what I was expecting from the pictures. I thought it would be a little bit smaller, but I mean, now that I'm looking at this, I don't know how you'd make it much smaller. I'm going to get some pictures later of it posted next to my PS5, see where it stands. I bet they're honestly very similar in size. But let's take a look at what we're going to do for the rest of the build. and I'll kind of talk about some of the pricing. So my goal here, which I think is probably pretty common, is I wanted to make a console replacement. Now you're never gonna get the performance of a PS5 or an Xbox X for the 400 or 500 bucks or whatever they go for out of a PC. You're just not gonna be able to do it. But I wanted to have something that I could play some of my Steam games on the TV and that kind of thing, and I wanted it to look more like a console. So that was my specific choice on picking the Fractal Ridge. Was I thought, hey, this thing looks really sharp. It's going to look just like a console sitting in my living room. I went ahead and went with the black. I've done a few white builds lately, but I just thought the black looked very traditional, and it was going to work out nicely for me. So as far as the rest of the parts go, on the idea of keeping the price down, so I know that I'm not going to be able to do 4K native because that's just going to put the price too high for my goals. I'm trying to keep it relatively cheap. So, but I know that the GPU is going to be a limiting factor. So I went ahead and went with AM4. So I got the B550, the ITX version here from ASRock. I think ASRock's really come up in the world. They're making some great products. But I knew the CPU was not going to be a huge limiting factor for me. And they had a really good sale on basically the 5700 X3d. So I wanted to get back into the 3D V-Cache type processor. And the 5800, it goes on sale occasionally, but it's still pretty expensive. The 5700, I think I picked up like right at $200 on sale. So when looking at it, yeah, I could have gone AM5 with the 7600. It probably would have been slightly faster, but the DDR5 would have been more expensive. The motherboard would have been more expensive. And ultimately, my video card is going to be my really limiting factor trying to hook this thing up to a 4K TV. So I was just looking at like how can I get the parts to just run this thing as cheap as possible, and that 5700 X3D with the AM4 ITX motherboard really fit the bill. They were super cheap. And then I'm going to pair that with, I just got DDR4 32 gigs of 3600, which once again, that's a little bit cheaper, a little bit of money savings there. And then I went with, this thing is always from B&H Auto or B&H Video. It seems like it's always on sale. This is a Gen 4 M2 drive, and it's 2 terabyte, and you can usually pick these up for about 104 bucks. So this is a killer deal. And then getting it all fit to in here, I went ahead and picked up the Thermalright low profile CPU cooler. I think this thing's going to work great, especially on the 5700 X3D. You can't really overclock those at all, but I'll probably run a little bit of an undervolt, and I bet it'll run nice and cool. And then this is the part where I'm definitely going to be relying on some upscaling, but I already had this video card sitting around. I've done a lot of testing on it, and I've been pretty vocal that I think the 6750 XT is the best bang for the buck video card that you can get right now. You can get them for $299 and brand new. They got 12 gigabytes of VRAM. They're last generation, but they're really pretty solid. And the nice thing about AMD is whenever they come out with new FSR technology or anything like that, like I know 3.1 is about to drop, should make the visuals look a little better. They don't lock it behind the newest generation. So old generation doesn't really matter. This is the MSI model. I know this thing's going to have a rough time doing 4K. Goal is not 4K native. I think we'll be able to do a quality upscale, which will basically put it at 1440p. And this thing should be able to get 60 FPS in just about any title, rendering natively at 1440p and then upscaling it. So I'm hoping this whole combo comes together to be a pretty affordable package for doing a console type replacement. And then but we'll ultimately have to see. So let's get down to it and start building. There's always an order of operations to these things, and I've learned this lesson a million times, but these systems are so small, the heatsink ends up being the biggest part. So, probably in hindsight, I should have removed this VGA card. For some reason, I thought there was going to be an actual flexible riser. This is like a hard riser in this case, which is actually a pretty cool design. But I should have removed this, removed the power cord, seated the motherboard, got it all installed, then put this riser in, then the CPU cooler in. That would have been the proper order of operations. But I was raised by a dad that told me never to ask for directions. So we did it the hard way, but we were able to get it all seated, all 3 screws in here on the riser, good to go. I ended up being able to just use like a little drill bit and hand turn them, but if we would have done the proper order of operation, would have been a lot easier. So we've got the motherboard in with the CPU, the RAM, the M2 drive, and the cooler installed with the VGA Riser installed. Looking at this, it's going to be super easy to install the graphics card. My biggest concern here with all these builds is just going to be the wiring. So let's start taking a look at that, and we'll keep pushing. And up next, for the power supply, went ahead and got the Seasonic 750 gold rated with a 10-year warranty. Seasonic makes great units, and this was actually a pretty killer deal. When you're going with the ITX, you're going to need that small form factor power supply, and unfortunately that is where you're going to spend a little bit extra of your money. So in the small form factor, usually the cases are a little bit more expensive. This one was $130. That's not that bad. You can definitely do cheaper on a budget build, but $130 is really not bad for quality case. But this power supply for 750, it is a very nice unit. And this one, I think I got on sale for about $110. However, you know, a lot of these units are more up like $170, $180, $200. And that can be another spot that you can end up spending a little extra money. But when you look at these things, you know, it's giving you plenty of power. 750 is probably overkill for this build. And then if you look at just how small this unit is, I mean, it's really impressive. They're just absolutely awesome. Giving me a little bag and everything. Yeah, you can see, you know, for the money, yeah, this is 750 watt power supply, and just look at the size of it. Fully modular, everything's good. I don't know if I have another power supply sitting around to give you a comparison. Here I got like an OEM one. So I mean, if you look at the size difference, this is an OEM, you know, probably 300 watt. This is a small form factor 750, once again from Seasonic. Absolutely impressive what they can do on the size. And then, but you are going to pay a little bit extra. Let me see if I can get this sticker off of here. Yeah, that's alright. But anyway, we'll get this thrown in there. This has got to go in between. Did not expect to have. There's like a 90-degree hard plate riser into a. How's this going to work here? There we go. That comes out. Alright, so there's a hard plate riser here going from the motherboard to a 90-degree offset. And then you've got a hard, probably 1-inch spacer there. Because when I first put this video card in, I was like, this is not going to work. So go ahead. This thing actually fits pretty well in here. Let me pull this back out. Definitely a snug fit. I'd probably pull this case apart more, but shouldn't need to. Okay, and the video card fits in just that snug. Now I got my power cable bundle here. I was going to plug it in first, and I already actually zip tied it up. I can tell it's not going to work, but then I realized it just was going to take a lot of fitment up here. So from working on the other side, I already knew I could pop this top cover off. So we'll do that next. There's the back side with those fans going into the GPU in the back of the motherboard. No SSDs required because we got that M2. And once again, here's the front side. That's my about 30-second wiring job. I could probably clean it up a little bit more, but there's no glass on the side of this or anything. I do need to make sure it's all flush. And then I just realized, I don't know if I turned that power supply on or not. Well, we'll find out here momentarily. Alright, so I went ahead and booted the computer up for the first time, and it did not have the options I wanted. So luckily, this did come with a BIOS setup that it could recognize the 5700 X3d chip. However, it did not have all the PBO options because it was running a version 2.2, which would do the X3D, but there was updates that you could do PBO with the 5700X, with the all the X3D AM4. So for the PBO, we're not going to do any sort of frequency tuning or anything like that because it's voltage and multiplier locked on the X3D AM4 chips. However, we do want to have access to that curve optimizer because that usually helps out quite a bit on these. So we're going to go into the BIOS settings. I just reloaded that version 3.4, and it should now give us our options. So first thing, we don't want to forget, we want to load up our DDR4 XMP profile here. So we got the 3600 CL18, not the greatest stuff in the world, but it's just fine for what we're doing here. And then we're going to go into advanced AMD overclocking, accept precision boost overdrive. You got to go in here, should be advanced, curve optimizer, all core, negative. Let's start out with you know what? I got confidence. Let's go with the 20. I bet 20 works good. Now we're going to save changes and exit. Alright, so my whole goal was to make this a console replacement. And I've never used this before in my life. I literally Googled how to make a Steam box, and top Redditors said ChimeraOS is awesome and super easy to use. So figured this system's kind of all new territory for me, so why not try out a new OS as well? So let's see how this thing goes. Supposedly it's pretty easy to manage. Look at that, downloading Steam. This is pretty awesome. This thing looks like it's freaking like a DOS loader here. This is feeling real hacker, man. Yeah, let's go for standard install, sure. Oh, this looks motivating as hell. My battery is low. Yeah, that's right. I tell you what, that was pretty easy. Alright, so just that quick, I guess I, with no prior knowledge, got Chimera downloaded. It pretty much just looks like an Express installer. You know, Steam OS runs off of Linux and basically converts your box into a console. It just loads straight up into Steam. I mean, I had to log in, and now I'm already downloading games. So all in all, this is a pretty awesome experience for doing a mini ITX type build. So normally when I build a PC, I go through and I install my MSI Afterburner and everything I need to basically benchmark, record, and take a look at the performance as it stands, and then I kind of compare, you know, what's this versus that, or just how to do in general. I went ahead on this rig, just spur of the moment. I made this mini ITX build, and I thought to myself, you know what? Let's just try one of these SteamOS builds. And so, like I showed you, I put Chimera on here, OS, which basically is just a Linux build that allows you to launch into SteamOS directly. However, it doesn't have all the Windows types advantages. Like, I can't install Afterburner, put my regular overlay and everything on. And I don't have any real way while playing a game to run a log file and see what my average and 1% lows and all it comes out to. But really, my goal with this PC is just to make a console replacement that has good visuals that gets a little bit higher frame rate. So my goal for single player games is 60 FPS, because most of the consoles at this point are targeting, probably around 30. I know that they have different games that can play higher in different modes, but if you're playing like a single player game, the console's going to be doing 30. Let's try to do at least 60. And then on the multiplayer, I think the limiting factor is if you hook this up to a TV, even a nice TV is only 120 hertz. So we'll just be looking at trying to achieve 120 hertz or FPS on multiplayer games. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down through, and you'll kind of see how easy, if you're just used to using Steam, that's basically all this is. I got my Xbox Elite controller or whatever. I'm not a huge controller guy, which is ironic because I'm making a console replacement, but if I suck, it's because I don't know how to use a controller, but that's what it is. So, like I said, we're just going to go down and see, you know, with the current setup, with that 5700 X3D and the 6750 XT, I'm hooked up to 4K, and I want to see, like, hey, is this more of an affordable build capable of outclassing your consoles? Alright, so this is annoying. Well, not really annoying, but just stuff I'm not used to. So because the Steam OS, basically, which is what we're running, it's not official from Valve, but this is what ChimeraOS is. It runs the, you got this quick reference thing here. So even though VSync was off in the game, there was this frame rate limit right here. So I have like a Legion Go. It's kind of got the same feature set where it's like, hey, I don't want it to go over a certain frame rate. And that's where you can set it. So I had to turn the frame rate limiter off in on the Steam basically side of it, even though VSync in game was off. So now here we're looking at, I decided not to screw up any more lobbies. We're just in the firing range, which actual lobbies with real people running around. FPS might be a little bit lower, but you can see depending on where we're at, this is 4K native on this card. It's not amazing, but this is definitely like smooth and playable. We're getting 100, probably like, I'd say like low, probably 1% lows, like 80, and then, you know, average is probably like 95 or something if I had to guess looking at this. Obviously depends on if you're outdoors, indoors, whatever you're doing. Like if I come in here, actually no, it didn't go up. I figured it'd go up. So, but we said the goal was to be 120 FPS. So we're gonna leave it at native because this game does not have yeah, we're gonna leave it at 8. Bring that down. Medium. Oh, shadows. We don't need those to be insane. We want to leave all that stuff enabled. Effect. Maybe just medium. Medium. Okay. See how that does. I mean, overall, this looks freaking awesome in native 4K playing Apex at 100 to 110. I even turned down a couple of things. Let me go see. I forget what the whole point of this thing is. Isn't there like guns around here somewhere or something? But not quite there yet. So let's see if turning down the textures a little bit maybe will help. Let's just go with high. I feel like nothing I'm doing is really helping here. I mean, bottom line, it's 4K, it's 4K, it's 6750 trying to run this thing. But I would argue I don't have, the FPS numbers for the new consoles, but I doubt they're pulling like 100 FPS on average with the settings maxed out. I could be wrong, but this looks really really good. So I'm gonna count this one at not ultra. I'll call it high settings and 100 FPS. I guess maybe I was being optimistic when I was saying 120 was my goal for multiplayer, but we'll find out running through more titles. We want to go ahead and move on. I don't really want to waste too much time on Apex. Oh no, we're just getting below. Alright, cool. Alright, let's just see what maximum does. Alright, maximum 4K native. We'll call it pulling about 50. We're also indoors here. Get where we're going in this place. It's like the intro to the game here. Alright, cool. I really want to get outdoors. There we go. Alright, so not doing too hot. Maximum. I guess this is a single player type game, but I mean it is, but let's see here. Graphic settings. Also, interestingly, that there's no. Both these. I'm going to jump right to medium because that wasn't going too well. Alright. There you go. 4K native medium. I'm calling that 60 FPS. It's jumping between like 57 and 62. So, still very smooth experience. And this game looks good. I guess I came right out of the rip kind of. I knew Apex because the multiplayer game wasn't going to have an upscaler. But right off the rip, this one doesn't either. So, I'll be interested to see some of these other games, what it looks like once we get other stuff. So I'm going to call Armored Core medium 4K native. That got our 60 FPS, met our goal for the single player. Alright, let's take a look at Cyberpunk. Just get a setup. And I'm not going to even try ray tracing, trying to do this 4K stuff. So obviously Cyberpunk is an absolute destroyer of worlds. Oh, look at that, because I'm on Steam and I automatically went to Steam Deck. That's cute. The fuck? Dude, just take me to the top. Alright. Oh my god. If you go... Alright, I'll have to cut that out later. If you go like one too high. Alright, we're going to try Ultra... FSR quality. I would love it. I would run the benchmark, but I had somebody call me out before, and they were like, oh, the benchmark's so easy. If you run Dogtown or whatever, your rig's gonna get fucking fucked up. So we'll find out. I think I'm in Dogtown. This looks like it. Oof. This is not good. We're getting like 26 FPS. Alright, cool. I'm a shinobi. Let's see here. How the heck do you get to your actual options in this game? Am I an idiot? Yep, I'm an idiot. Alright, cool. Like I said, I never use a gamepad, so I'm just completely... Let's come down one from Ultra. We'll go to high. I don't think that's going to help enough. Oh, we're looking at like a whopping 30 FPS. I'm gonna keep doing that. All right, quality is not gonna work. Dude, this is so annoying. Okay. Oh my god. Quality. Oh my god, I just want to select it and scroll over. Oh. Alright, let's try balanced. Here, I'm using the freaking mouse, dude. I know I'm trying to make this into a console, but whatever. Oof. I mean, this is playable, but I'd say this is like really leaning hard on my smart weapons here, and that's probably more like a console experience. Is that locked at 30? Why is it sitting like right at 30? I don't like that. Oh, here we go. This defaulted. Something seems off here. Oh, max, dude. That's the other thing. I think it's all because this is like made to be around a Steam Deck, but this is like absurd. Yeah, turn that off. Why would I want? Okay, this makes more sense. Balanced settings on high, we're sitting at 52. I really want at least 60, so we'll try this one last time. Graphics. I don't want to go any more on the medium. Balanced. Apply. Yeah, I don't want to do any more than that on... I never want to upscale more than balanced. Ideally, I always do quality on FSR. But obviously, Cyberpunk, it looks like this Dogtown area is relatively hard. Oof, oof. I don't remember. Have a grenade. Oof. I would have to really adjust my sensitivity and stuff to do this with the controllers. This is hard for me. Yeah, once you grow up keyboard and mouse, there's no switching it. All right, so I'm going to call it... I could really fine-tune the settings, but I'm going to call it medium with FSR balanced on Cyberpunk, and that's where we're going to leave it for that one. Alright, we're going to try this again. FSR quality, high settings. We made sure that the frame rate was unlocked this time. We'll see what this gets us. Oh, you know, it's already pumping out mid-80s. I think we could have maybe gotten away with Ultra. Oh, no, down in the 60s. So, yeah, I think this is probably an idea. Just north of 60 for a racing game. I mean, we don't need insane frame rates. We just need it to be smooth. This thing is running well. Mid-60s. So, yep, I'm going to call it. That would be my settings there. Forza Horizons 5, quality upscale, high settings, 60, 70 FPS. And I don't want to sit and watch this whole thing again, so we're just going to go ahead and exit this guy. One thing I really do like about this Chimera OS is just how fast you can swap games, enter, exit, do whatever you need. That's an absolute high point for this thing. I feel like even in Windows, you're kind of, you know, like exit game,
It's like maybe thinking about it a little bit. Launch game, okay. I will say it's taking me a little bit longer because I'm running all these for like the first time. I had them all download last night, so it's got to load the shaders and everything. But if it wasn't for that, I think we'd be swapping between titles very rapidly. Alright, so we got God of War loaded up here. This game still looks great, and if you haven't played this series, highly recommend. God of War, the reboot, and then Ragnarok, or whatever the second one was called, absolutely phenomenal. See if we can get some actual gameplay. This probably isn't the most realistic because there's not going to be enemies here in the beginning. But we're already doing in the high 60s. We're on 4K FSR quality, high settings. I might try to dip into the Ultra here and see what it looks like in a second. No. As soon as we get kind of out of the cutscene, we're in the mid 60s. Let's just try it out. Oh boy. Options, settings, graphics, Ultra. No. Ultras, you know, high 50s, low 60s. High was high 60s, low 70s. I mean, I think that's really... I always prefer, if at all possible, to just stay at the FSR quality. So I try not to go any further than that. I think this would be a personal preference. And once we get more enemies in some of the more technical fights, you might choose the high. But, I mean, this game does look great. Yeah, dipping on the low side in 52. This is still absolutely playable and looking good. Feel like I maybe have some perceived chop in it or something. Let's go back settings, graphics back to high.
Everything is different, boy.
Yeah, I can sort of tell the difference. Feels smoother though. I would probably do high. Yeah, I'd go with high. I'd take the slight smoothness over the little bit of fidelity. So that's where I'll call it there. Is quality on the upscaler and high 60 to 70. So that's where we're at. It's still pretty rock solid. This looks great on my 4K display, and I don't have it hooked up to my TV right now because I'm doing it in the where I can record, but I do have it on a 32-inch 4K MSI monitor, and game looks absolutely great. So, but we'll wrap it up there for God of War. Let's see where we at options wise. Display, render scale. Nope. Let's see if we can do a quality. Apply. Graphics. High. Seems like that's kind of been where we're at. Is high on quality. 60 FPS. Frame limiters off. Make sure we didn't have VSync. Frame limit off. Yep. Okay. There's 60, 50.
Let them brawl. Let them face the insurmountable might of the Helldivers.
Oh boy, making a run for it. High 50s.
Throwing grenade.
What? Are you kidding me? I can either go medium. Medium gets me to 60, but it looks kind of cheesy. We go ultra display. I'm trying to find some sort of balance. Apply. That's it. Nope. Gonna have to do it. Graphics. High. Display. Balanced. Yeah, it's gonna have to be high and balanced. So I really don't like going balanced versus quality on FSR. That's what's gonna take. And I'll be honest with you, on the 4K display, really not bad. Like, this is good, solid performance. That looks a little blurry.
Bag's empty.
Oof. Anyway, that puts you at 60 to 70. And also, I have to remember, like, I'm sitting probably 18 inches from this 4K display. So if I hooked this up to a TV and had this going and I was, like, sitting on my couch doing the whole console replacement gig, this would probably look pretty good. And it doesn't look bad right now. Oof, rocket guy, I hate that. Oh, I need to reload. Revolver. Anyway, yeah, that'd be it for Helldivers then. It's going to be FSR balanced and high. 60, 70. Alright, it was getting late last night, so I gave up on testing this thing out, but let's get back into it. Next up's going to be The Last of Us, Part 1. This game was definitely a hammer when it first came out. Looks like we might be 60 locked. This is the other thing that annoys me. This Steam overlay. I have to constantly reset it to the no frame rate limit. It just... I can already tell you we're 30 locked here. Alright, VSync off. Oh, frame gen. FSR 3 frame. I wonder if that's new. I don't remember that being in this game. Alright, FSR 3 quality. That all looks good. Cancel. Apply changes. Let's just see what Ultra gets us. Still locked at 30. Thought when I turned VSync off that would help it, but no. Alright, not much better though. Sitting at Ultra FSR quality. I mean, the game looks great, and for this game, you could probably play it around this 40 FPS, but that's not really our target. We're trying to go for 60, so just run these one by one. Alright. Honestly, the game looks great on this 4K display. I can't tell a huge difference. Like, between medium and ultra, usually the textures are just... There's a huge difference, and things... Like, usually it's blatantly obvious. This really doesn't look too bad, medium versus ultra, but it's still not quite at 60, so... Unfortunately, once again, we're going to have to add a little extra upscale. Go balanced. There's our 60 FPS that we're looking for. So FSR balanced. And honestly, this looks really good. The only thing that occurs with FSR is, I don't know if you can see it, but if you look at this grate right here, whenever there's straight lines with the upscaler and it's trying to figure out, it can't just leave them still. So if you look at that grate as you like pan the camera and you look, you know, these lines shouldn't be moving at all. So like up close, they're fine, but in the distance, and that's where you see it with FSR the most, is usually like chain link fences or railings or like straight lines kind of far away. It has trouble figuring them out, and so they just kind of dance all over the place. But like really, this is not something to complain about in this game. Like that amount of just a little bit of dancing. As I back up, you can see the line dance closer and closer to us. But that, as far as FSR goes, especially balance, that's really not that bad. Like when I'm looking at these buildings, I'm looking at the characters, everything here looks good. Let's just, for curiosity, play with this a little bit. So we're going to leave this as balanced graphics. Let's go back to high. Nah, that's not going to do it, but let's try this. I'm not a huge fan of frame generation. I think this is a title that it would work really well in because it's single player, it's more cinematic. I mean, honestly, trying to pan, see if there's any weird artifacts. Look at the characters. I mean, straight up, I'd probably play this game with frame generation on. And that's the coolest part about AMD, is this is a 6750, so this is not a current gen card. I picked this card, one, because I had it laying around, so but I think it's the best bang for the buck card right now. It's $299 almost all the time. It's last gen, but it's got 12 gigs of VRAM, and it's actually fast enough to use the 12 gigs, unlike like the 30, 60, 12 gig. I think that's kind of a useless card that gets bought way too often. But I'll be honest with you, this frame gen on the FSR feels really pretty good in this game, and I'm not seeing any crazy visuals. I mean, obviously I'm just in one scene here. I guess, you know, when I was spinning him around, his hair, no. I mean, now I'm just like spinning in circles. I guess right around his head, he kind of has a halo. I bet that's from the frame gen. Just trying to figure out where the edge of that hair is. But, not even that noticeable. I had to hyper focus on that. I'd probably say this is a big win, and this is good news because the more games that start getting frame generation in it, these single player titles that are really hard to run, you know, we're going from a base to like 40 to 50 frames per second. It's taking us up to like 70 or 80, and this feels really good. And any bit of little added latency that we're receiving from it is not going to matter because it's a single player game. Like, what's important here is the smoothness. So this is a great selling point for, I think, frame gen is beneficial, because right now we're able to play, you know, 4K. I mean, shoot, what if we even last thing, I'm wasting too much time on this game, but let's take our stuff back to quality with our frame gen on. And if you see any tearing, that's because I'm going through the capture card that only allows that hard locked 60 frames per second. My actual screen is 165 hertz 4K. So like if I wasn't going through the capture card, I wouldn't have that tearing. But even this right here, I can go back to the quality upscale, which I highly prefer, and then turn that frame gen on, and this still looks really good. And I'm getting, you know, 70 to 80 frames. I bet in the lowest it gets down to 60, which I will say that probably gets a little dangerous because you're basically doubling your frame rate. So if you're down at 60, your base frame rate's, you know, probably like 30, 35 or something. And that gets a little bit weird because even AMD, you know, they recommend had to have 60 to begin with, but you know, as you try it out, you can figure out what you're most comfortable with. But I would say this is pretty good. I'd probably play it this way. I'd play it high, FSR, quality, and frame gen on is the way I would play it. And this actually feels great. It looks great, and that's the way I would do it. So. But let's move on to some more games. We got to keep going down through the list, but I do think that was kind of an interesting conversation and trying out some trial and error with some different settings. Overall, so far, though, I mean, everything I've attempted, I've been able to get some pretty playable experience with some good-looking graphics. Let's try out Monster Hunter here. So far, I'm like pretty confident. This is not my normal. I mean, my normal is like my personal main rig. I'm gonna spend. I usually shoot for about $2,000 to $2,500. I try to get like at least like a 4080, and well, I mean, like right now my build's a 7800 X3d and a 4080, and that lets me, you know, game 4K without having to use all the tricks. No frame generation. Some games I'll use, you know, DLSS quality, but that's about it. And I'm usually shooting for, you know, at 4K, trying to get 100 plus FPS on, you know, single player type games, which is usually achievable. But if you're not that kind of guy and you're not wanting to spend that much money, what I think is cool about this rig is that extremely small form factor. You know, you could easily put this down by your TV, or even if it's at a desk, or if you're in an apartment with smaller space, and it'll do up to like your 4K TV. And all of these, you know, it's not like my all-out builds that you can just do whatever you want and just max everything out. But with just a small amount of tweaking, this computer has been very capable of doing, you know, like playing on a 4K TV. Like, there's been no game yet that I'm like, oh, this is trash. There's been no game that I've had to set everything to low or dip into like performance upscaling or anything along those lines. So overall, I'm pretty dang satisfied. And I'm just taking some notes as we go, so I have this to compile. All right, Monster Hunter. I know some people just love this game. I honestly haven't gotten that much into it. But I played the intro, played a couple different things. I did say the graphics, you know, I don't know if this is maybe everybody's style, but it definitely looks clean. We're already locked to 60 again. Okay, that stayed off. Let's see here. It's funny because these are all the games I've just loaded up lately, but on my main rig, I haven't even had to like try all this stuff out. So like, where the hell, why do some games make just like, yeah, I swear they just like hide the settings sometimes. It drives me nuts. All right, display, let's see what we got here. 4K display frequency. Once again, that's because of the capture card. Unlimited, frame cap, VSync off. Settings, image. That's interesting. I wonder why it thinks we only have 10.99 gigs. It's also cool that all this is this for real? See, I'm getting 167 frames per second. I mean, I wouldn't say his game is like probably extremely graphically demanding, but this game looks really good for that kind of performance. Am I like jacked up here? I mean, that's something where I would expect it's like, oh, it's got frame gen on or something. Let's just go high, confirm. Okay, that's more realistic. I don't know what it was doing. maybe it had frame gen or something. But just high settings here, we're sitting at about 78. Is that any sort of upscaling or anything? Options in this game are super weird. Image quality 150%. That seems weird. What is it like? Upscaling? I don't even know. How do you get 150%? It's like I'm giving 110%, coach. Like, okay. Yeah, so I guess if we just run it at 100%, I don't know. That's a weird setting, but yeah, 140 frames a second. 140 to 150. That's pretty nuts. I mean, this is just in town, but I don't think the world's going to be all that much more demanding. I mean, this game's pretty simple. Alright, so we'll just call that maxed out. Monster Hunter. Native max. And we'll call it 140 to 150 frames per second. Damn. That's what I like to see. You know what? Because, like, this game has a clear art direction, and I'm just like, maybe I'm crazy. Some of the things do look a little dated. Like, if you look at those mountains and stuff, that definitely looks like a dated, like, engine type thing. But I think this runs off the Resident Evil engine, which Resident Evil has pretty good graphics. But, I mean, overall, like, the art style is very clear. They're going, you know, for the Japanese theme. They got the cherry blossoms, all that stuff. But, like, this is a great-looking game. And it just shows, you know, everybody just... I think kind of the sentiment is, you know, it's like so many developers just lean on Unreal Engine, and then all these games end up looking exactly the same, and there's no art direction, and they're just like, they're just kind of whatever. And if you have a real clear art direction, and, you know, that game has beautiful colors, and maybe it's not for everybody, but that's great performance. I mean, if you're getting that kind of performance on 4K, that means, you know, you could probably run that game on a potato. On a 1080p monitor, so, which that's the kind of stuff I like to see. Like, you shouldn't need a 4090 to have a fun experience. So if you can get on Monster Hunter with your buddies and, you know, down some monsters, some big old dragons or whatever, co-op games, I'm so glad that co-op games are kind of making a comeback, because for a long time it felt like they were dead. There was just hardly any options, and now you have like Helldivers. You got, you know, like, I know a lot of people get into Monster Hunter. I'm sure there's other titles, but there's quite a few now where you can have a great co-op experience. That warms my heart. I'll say it like that. Alright, I don't know what it is about this thing and compiling shaders for the first time, and maybe I just don't have the patience, but I feel like once you get all your games installed and everything going on this Chimera OS, it works really well. Like, it loads all your games very fast. It loads into the system real fast. You can swap games real fast. But I'm at, like, probably less than a 50% success rate on it actually loading a game for the first time and working. Like, it ends up just black screening like this. And this is just me not knowing enough about the system, but... I'm sure I could just Google it. There's got to be some sort of like Control-Alt-Delete option here to be like, yo, what the hell are you doing? And I'm sure there is, or there's something to do to like unscrew it. But I shouldn't, like, ideally I don't really want to have to be doing that every time I try to load a game. Like, this is the next game, trying to load up Mortal Kombat, it's loading the shaders, gets to 99%, sits there for a while, and completely black screen. And I don't know, maybe if I was patient... No, it's not going to do it. I'm pretty sure the other night I just left it here, and it just did this. So, and it's completely non-responsive. Like, nothing I do has any impact. So, that's a little bit frustrating. And I'm not trying to dog on them too hard, because I know this is like a team that's providing this for free, and I actually think it's really neat. And I think I've said it a bunch of times, but I'm probably going to do a video on just this OS by itself, because I think there's some very interesting... like niches that it fills, but it is a little bit annoying. I'm just not having a very high success rate, and Oh, wait. I actually got some response. What's going on here? Try to just reload out of it. Usually I can't even get that much out of it. Hey, it looks like it might work. Alright, well, I guess I'll just eat my words, because it did come back to life there. I just had to relaunch it. So, Mortal Kombat 1. I'm not a huge fighter franchise type guy, but when I can catch these on sale, I do. I'm a total noob when it comes to these games, but if I catch them on sale, I do personally kind of like to play like the little campaigns. I know that's not what these games are about, but it's just a cheesy little story where I get to punch and kick my way and feel good for a little bit. And I usually beat it in like a day or two, and it's like, oh, that was fun. I'm by no means good at these games, not even above bad. I would say I'm just solidly bad at fighters, but I do enjoy them from time to time. So we'll see what this thing can do. Now that's the other thing I don't get. Some of these it'll like pre-compile the shader in Steam, and then you'll load in and it'll want to compile the shader again. So probably somebody smarter than me knows why that is, but I don't. So it is what it is. Alright, it took 3 tries, but we got this thing going. Let's take a look at what we got. Alright, 4K, custom. Wait, medium and low are the only 2 options? Okay. Dude, my day keeps getting weirder, man. What kind of game only offers medium and low? I mean, this looks cool, but like, you kidding me? And it's locked at 30 FPS, so it actually does look cool. Kind of looks like trash. Like, if I wanted 30 frames per second, I would just play this on my PS5. Gotta be because this Steam thing, it thinks it's like a Steam Deck. This is wild. Well, let's see if we can get the 60 on medium settings. Alright, well, immediately this already looks way smoother. I think it was running medium last time anyway. I mean, the game looks good, but I'm gonna load this game later when I finally put Windows on this computer and see what's up. Because it's gotta be something where it thinks like, oh, it's a Steam Deck and just limits you to medium, which I don't know why it would do that. 56 FPS, like, that's good enough for me. Just out of curiosity, though, we're gonna run it one more time with the upscaler. Oh, it's gonna be locked to 60 anyway. God damn it. mean, at least if you play it this way, I'll be honest with you, on this title, I don't see any degradation from using the upscaler, really. And now at least you know you're pretty much 60 locked. I think I saw 59 at like, yeah, every once in a while I see 59. But you can tell GPU's only running at like 70%. Cool, I meet the requirements for online play. That is hilarious about this game. If your computer just sucks or you're like on Steam Deck and you can't, I think it's like 30 FPS, it'll just be like, nah, you don't get to play online, which is hilarious. It's like, yeah, I got you, man. You don't want to play like that. you don't want any part of that. Just stay off in your own world, man. You don't want none of that. All right, Red Dead. This is one game that just never gets old. Like, you might not be playing it all the time. Like, I guarantee you go back and you play Red Dead right now, you're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun playing Red Dead. Oh boy. Yep. I guess I don't have Rockstar's launcher installed. Is that the problem? Alright, let's see how many times it crashes trying to load this thing up. That'll be interesting. Alright, so I knew Red Dead was going to take a minute, so I kind of skipped ahead till I could find my settings. I guess I don't have my save on here, so this is just kind of the intro, which I don't know if this is the best representation, but I ran the benchmark. It was about the same. So if I come in here to settings, probably what I would ultimately do for balance of graphics versus having a playable frame rate. Once again, it's a single player game. But basically what it came, once again, VSync's off, so none of that stuff gets in the way. The quality preset, I'm basically on the lower end of balanced right before you go to performance, and then I'm at FSR to balanced. So balanced and balanced. You could probably play around with a little more of the settings individually. That's getting me about high 50s. This is kind of a weird area. You might think like, oh, it's not rendering much. No, it is rendering a lot. It's just all covered in the snow. Because when I did the benchmark, it actually got a little bit higher. Like, I think it was closer to 60 or 61, and then now that I'm in game, it's sitting at about, 55 or so. So that's pretty much where I'd leave this one. This is a harder game to run, but still, I think once you get into the real town, like when I was doing the actual benchmark thing, which I don't want to run through those, it takes forever in this game to run the whole thing, but does look pretty dang good. And then I wanted to load into the actual game to make sure. And balanced, getting you upscaled and on your 4K screen. It's pretty much the setup you're going to need to do for Red Dead on this PC. So that's enough of Red Dead. It's one of those games, a little bit older, still a ton of fun, but still pretty difficult to run. And what else? Holy cow, I got a lot of titles left. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. I'm going to skip Resident Evil 4. We're going to go right to Senua. I haven't played this game yet at all. I beat the first one, and I absolutely loved it, especially at the time when it came out. There wasn't a whole lot of games doing like the real life actors and actresses and everything like that, so I was a big fan of this thing. I got the second one because I knew I liked the first one, but I haven't played it yet, except for I know it was very demanding to run. So I'm including this because I want to see like, hey, on the most demanding new release titles, can we get this thing to get some decent output for a 4K setup? And we'll go through here and figure it out. Alright, well, right off the rip, tough game to run. I got it set up highest settings, FSR quality, rocking a solid 25 FPS. So, my absolute guess here is if you were actually playing on console, it'd probably be on the lowest settings, rocking like 25, but we'll see. The other thing I think is interesting about this one, because I already looked at it, is it includes FSR 3. Now, FSR 3 actually didn't have any quality improvement to the upscaler that I'm aware of. It just included some of the benefits of, like, for the frame generation. So that was the big selling point on FSR 3, was like, hey, we got frame generation. I think this would be an amazing game to have that, because if it's anything like the first one, it's a lot of puzzles. There is a little bit of combat, completely single player. So I think frame gen would be a great addition to this game. And it says FSR 3, but then there's no option in here, even in the advanced settings, for frame generation. So I'm going to try not to go low, because my goal is to not go low at all. So we're going to do medium and balanced and see what that gets us. Okay. But yeah, so anyway, I think 3.1, FSR 3.1, whenever that comes out or whatever, that's supposed to have some actual improvement to the image quality. And like we were talking about earlier with those grates dancing, it's supposed to solve a lot of that temporal stability. So when, you know, something shouldn't be moving, it's going to help it not move, so it's not dancing around like we saw in The Last of Us. On this game, I mean, I'm rocking mid-40s pretty solid, and part of this game is just how much of a graphical masterpiece it truly is. So I would probably consider playing about here, but the goal when we set out was to, hey, we need to get we need to get 60 FPS. So even low, like, I can almost barely tell a difference. I mean, probably on the fur on her, or at least into the 50s now. I mean, this could get ugly. Alright, performance upscaler, we're locked 60. It looks like some sort of VSync is on. Vertical sync off. Oh wow, yeah, we're just sitting right at 60. Alright, so let's play with this a little bit, because this is kind of interesting, because it has that preview mode. I've never seen that before. So we'll go up, performance preview. Ooh. That's actually a really cool feature. Like, look, there's your native. The FSR actually softens it a little bit, which is interesting, because in a lot of other games with FSR, I've seen it add a bunch of sparkle or shininess. Yeah, that's looking pretty bad. So when you go to ultra performance, that's noticeably bad. You can see how the ground is sparkling. It just looks terrible. It doesn't have enough info. Performance has got a little bit of that. Balance is pretty much gone. Quality, it's 100% gone. Like I said, I always want to run quality, but this game's just not going to let us. So let's see if we do performance, medium. Yeah, there's definitely some sparkling. I wonder if in-game, if I'll notice. I do kind of notice. Yeah. So to get 60 on something this demanding, it's going to be performance on the upscaler, which I really, really, really don't like, and low. But I'll be honest with you, I would not play the game this way. 60 FPS, this does feel nice, but it's not that important to me. All the kind of sparkling and dancing, which I don't know if it shows up too well on the capture, but that's what's more important to me. Like, this is such a cinematic type game that having it more of a cinematic type experience is not going to bug me too much. And overall, across the board, this PC has been more powerful than a console, probably pretty significantly. So I would say that if I'm getting medium settings with balanced upscaler and 45, on the console when it's trying to target 60, it's probably really reaching 45, and it's probably on those lowest of low settings. So you're still probably going to have a better experience here. And this honestly feels perfectly smooth. Nothing in this game is very fast. I mean, look at her. She's just limping around. There's no action. Well, I shouldn't say there's no action, but it's a lot of puzzles. It's a lot of craziness. And then, every once in a while a battle. So this is probably realistically how I'd play it. But I think that's going to be the end. This video is already going way too long, so that's going to be the end of my benchmark segment. And we'll move into kind of wrapping this up, looking at everything we did on this build and kind of where we're at.
We said from the start that we were never going to be able to match a console's performance for the price. There's just no way you can do a $400 to $500 computer that's even going to be able to have any hopes of hooking up to your 4K TV and having playable experience. But what our goal was is we wanted to have a affordable PC that would look right at home in our living room, and it would be able to have a little bit higher performance for not an outrageous price. And a lot of these parts I had already kind of laying around. The 6750 on my channel, I've been very vocal that I think it's one of the best value cards out there, and specifically for 1440p or a high refresh 1080. Today I decided to kind of really stretch it because I already had that card sitting on the bench. And then I decided to purchase the Fractal Ridge. Cannot say enough good things about that case. It met all of my wickets. It's compact. It looks right at home in the living room. It doesn't stand out. It was easy to build in. Had a great feature set. Very impressed there. And then as far as the rest of the parts go, I did not have the 5700 X3d laying around. I purchased that one. And kind of my logic there was, I'm a huge AM5 guy. I really think that everybody should be building AM5 at this point. But I wanted to keep the platform costs down as much as possible to make this semi-reasonable. And in the mini ITX world, the AM5 mini ITX motherboards, at least when I was shopping, were significantly more expensive. I really don't like complaining about the RAM because a lot of people are like, oh, DDR5 is so expensive. 32 gigs at this point is $95. It's not. But I have to acknowledge the memory cost was a little bit lower on the AM4. It was only about $60. So there's another, $35 savings or so. So I decided one last time, and I knew that I was going to be playing 4K. So the processor was not going to have a huge impact here. It was going to be primarily GPU limited. So I decided to one last time build on an AM4 platform, and I think it worked out. I went with the X3d because it was only $200. I know you could spend like $130 on a 5600, but I wanted the 8 cores, and I figured the X3d might help out in the 1% lows a little bit. Probably not because we're so GPU limited, but I figured it'd be a fun processor to include in here just because it is a gaming-focused build. Like, hey, let's get an X3d processor in it. So when you look at total what we spent, I've got it up here on the right. The case, $129.99. I've been watching this thing for a little while, not too long. I don't really see it go on sale much, but I think for the features that it has and that it is kind of a unique small form factor case, the $129.99 is pretty reasonable for it, in my opinion. The CPU, the 5700 X3D, we didn't really get to test its limits a ton on this because we were so GPU limited, but at $200 for an AM4 processor, I thought that was a great bargain. The CPU cooler, the Thermalright. Thermalright is the bargain brand cooling solution, and it was more than adequate, especially on the 5700 X3D. The X3D processors are pulling a little lower voltage. It's only like a 4.1 gigahertz processor. It's really leaning hard on that V-cache for its performance. So that worked out well for the small form factor as well, because our cooler was a pretty cheap. It was a $34 cooler. And then the motherboard, we went the ASRock B550 ITX.
I wanted to do that so I could have the PBO options, so we could get a little bit of an undervolt on that 5700 X3D through the curve optimizer. So we went with the B series, and 129, I thought that was a pretty good deal versus closer to about 200 for something on the AM5. And then at this point, I always just include 32 gigs of RAM in all my builds. 16 is really all that's required for gaming, but for the price difference for the $20, I like having the extra headroom and not having to worry about it. And then for the GPU, we went with our 6750. I've had this MSI card for a little while now. I've done a ton of testing with it. I don't know what the current market value on that specific card is, but I put the $299.99 up there because you can regularly score a 6750 of different brands at this point in time for right at the $300 mark. And then we just went with the Silicon Power 2TB UD90, which is a PCIe Gen 4 for speed there, and that's 104. Those are always available, it seems like, at that price. It's been a very, very good performing drive. I've used it in several builds, and for $105 for 2 terabytes, it's got great speed and it's hard to beat. And then the small form factor power supplies, that Seasonic at $100, which also a great deal. That's probably only about like 20 more bucks than I normally spend for a regular sized power supply in this range. So total, we're looking at $1,050 roughly for the build. That is roughly twice what a console costs. However, if you've already invested in PC gaming, really what the savings here is that you're enabling your entire Steam library in your living room. So you don't have to go out and buy, PlayStation games or Xbox games and Steam games or whatever the case is. If you've already got a PC that you like to game on, but you want to have a console experience in your living room, you get that whole library because you're now on a PC. And so how did it do performance-wise, though? Well, you saw through all the benchmarks, and I know I was a little bit long-winded on some of those, but we were trying to find the right settings. I think overall, it was a good performer. This isn't going to be your 4K native, ray tracing, ultra settings type build, but it isn't that price either. Something in that realm would probably be, $2,500 to $3,000 in the small form factor. So we're coming in at about $1,000 bucks, and I thought it was a very solid performer. I ended up not doing as many multiplayer games as I probably should have, but for Apex Legends, native, high settings, 100 FPS, that's awesome. If you got 120 hertz TV, that's going to be a great experience. Armored Core 6, native, medium settings, 60 frames per second. Cyberpunk, balanced medium, this one's a little tougher to run, 60 frames per second. Forza Horizon 5, quality, high, 60 to 70. God of War, quality, high, 60 to 70. Helldivers, balanced, high, 60 to 70. Last of Us, balanced, medium, 60. And so on as we go. My main goal was to have quality on the FSR. Some of these harder titles did require balanced. I'm really excited for the new FSR 3.1 to come out to have some of that temporal stabilization, because as they continue to mature and develop these software technologies, it's just going to make this system better and better and better. Now, I never like to purchase things with the hopes of, future returns. DLSS I would have preferred since I knew that I was going to have a lot of upscaling. However, in the $300 range, there just isn't an NVIDIA card that I would want to attempt this with. I would not want to attempt, doing the 4K screen or hooking it up to a TV with a base 4060, which usually comes in about $290. I think that the raw horsepower of the 6750 XT was taking us so much further so that ideally we're not having to upscale as much, even though FSR is a little bit of a weaker upscaler. So that was kind of my decision point there. And like I already stated, I had the 6750 already on hand, so it was an obvious choice here. I think the positive thing is we were able to get right at about 60 frames per second in almost every title tested. The only one that was really rough was that Hellblade 2 that just came out. And after I did the takes on where I was trying the different settings, I actually looked it up, and the consoles are targeting, I believe, like 24 frames per second, not even 30, I believe is what I saw, even if it was 30. And if you remember from the beginning of our test, we had everything on ultra and we were about there. And I guarantee you the consoles are not doing that. They're probably much lower settings. And it came from the game developers. They were like, hey, this is a cinematic experience. Cinematics 24, 25 frames per second. That's what we're shooting for. So realistically on that game, me trying to hit 60 on this was an unrealistic goal. And as we saw, that was the only title where it was like we needed performance upscaling, low settings to even try for 60. But still, the balanced settings, or balanced FSR medium at 45 looked really good. Also performed well, very smooth. There wasn't huge dips. That's good to see. It means the game's pretty well optimized. And then if you even did want to match just like, hey, their intent, 25 to 30 frames per second, you could really crank them up on the settings even higher. I probably wouldn't personally do it. I'd leave it there at about that 45. But that's kind of my comments on that. That was the only title where we weren't able to find a really good medium where the game still looked very good and our performance was still very high. So all in all, I think this experiment was a huge success. I really enjoyed building this computer, and I've had a blast testing it out and really seeing like, hey, 4K, it's more attainable than we think. I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to buy a 4K monitor to try to full-time game on this thing like at a desk. I would not do that. But the ability to set it in your living room, hook it up to your TV, access your Steam library that you already have, and play a lot of these high-end titles. And then, of course, anything older, like if you're a big GTA 5 type of guy, that's going to run absolutely no problem. Or if you like indie titles, you just want to play Hades in your living room, whatever the case may be, obviously those are going to be no problem at all, and you're going to be able to max out whatever refresh rate your TV has. I was trying to kind of put some of the more challenging single-player titles on here so you could see even worst-case scenario. This computer was able to do it, and do it pretty well. I think for the price, I'm very, very happy with the overall output. But if you have any comments or you feel differently or you got any questions about it, leave those down below. And if you enjoyed the content, go ahead and give me a subscribe. It really helps out. And have a good one.